Hey all, and welcome back to another episode of There's Danger Here. I'm Leilani, and today I'm going to be discussing a case of domestic terrorism. So, let's get into it, shall we? Timothy James McVeigh was born on April 23rd, 1968, to parents Noreen, Mildred, or Mickey Hill, and William McVeigh in Lockport, New York. He was the middle child of three and the only boy. When Timothy was 10 years old, his parents divorced, and he was sent to Pendleton, New York, to be raised by his father. His peers reported that he was a shy and withdrawn person growing up. Tim himself reported that he was bullied, and so he made up his own fantasy world to live in. He said that he was skinny and short, and they called him names like Noodle McVeigh. Tim started with comic books. Then, as he grew, he sold off his collection and switched to buying guns. Throughout high school, he was more of a loner than having any group of good friends and no girlfriend to speak of. To get through this time, his grandfather began teaching him about firearms. His interest in it took off. After graduating high school, Tim went to Bryant and Stratton College, but almost immediately dropped out, opting to work as an armored car guard. Then, in May of 1988, Tim joined the military at age 20. He went to basic training and then was stationed at Fort Benning with Terry Nichols. At Fort Benning, Tim and Terry met Michael Fortier. The trio grew close, and then from there, they went to Iraq as part of the Gulf War. Tim returned with a Bronze Star. After he returned, Tim tried out for the Green Beret, but didn't make it through selection. That seemingly ended his military career, and he was honorably discharged in 1991. Shortly after he discharged, he seemed lost. He showed up to his grandfather's at one time in just socks. His grandfather said he seemed off. Tim moved in with Terry Nichols for a short time, where he continued to rant about the government. Eventually, he began traveling to various gun shows, buying guns for those who maybe didn't want a record of the transaction. As he drove, he listened to right-wing extremists with Terry. One of the pieces of material was The Turner Diaries, written by William Pierce, a neo-Nazi, speaking about how a man took down the government through the use of a truck bomb and taking out an FBI building. His right-wing extreme thinking grew from this and was made worse by the fact that his friends and traveling companions held the same beliefs. Basically, groupthink seemed to take over. It is believed that their ideals were shaped by several movements. First, the CSA, Ruby Ridge, and finally Waco. Waco was supposedly the straw that broke the camel's back. You see, he went to Waco during the siege, handing out bumper stickers and paying attention to how it was being handled. According to him, when the Bradleys were finally used to cause destruction of civilian buildings, watching it burn with Americans inside, he knew he was going to commit an act of terrorism against the U.S. So let's do a little Cliff Notes version of these events. The Covenant, the Sword, and the Arm of the Lord, or CSA, is a white extremist group that is predominantly located in northern Arkansas, southern Missouri, and eastern Oklahoma. It was founded by Texas minister James Ellison in 1971 near Elijah, Missouri. In 1976, Ellison purchased a 220-acre farm near Bull Shoals Lake in Missouri in order to establish a CSA compound that was then known as the Zarephath Horeb. By 1978, the compound transformed the land into a guerrilla training camp. After years of complaints by local residents and run-ins with the law, according to Encyclopedia Arkansas, quote, on April 21st, 1985, after years of complaints by local citizens and informants, federal agents from the FBI, Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, as well as assorted state and local agencies, surrounded Zarephath Horeb. After a 3-day standoff, law enforcement officers entered the compound. This raid involved more than 300 law enforcement officers and resulted in the seizure of weapons, ammunition, explosives, gold, and 30 gallons of potassium cyanide. The CSA intended to use the potassium cyanide to poison the water supply of several large cities in order to expedite the coming of the second Messiah. End quote. The leaders of the group were indicted on conspiracy charges, but it is believed that Tim took this encroachment of the government to be violations of the members' personal rights. Ruby Ridge. Randy Weaver, a white separatist, along with his wife Vicky, 14-year-old son Sammy, and a friend Kevin Harris, were staying at an isolated cabin in Ruby Ridge, Idaho. Randy had been known to stockpile guns and had attended several known white supremacist venues, though continued to state that he was not a member, but was there for the guns. The ATF got involved, and during an exchange, a shotgun that was a 1/4 inch too short to be legal was moved between the parties. This caused many people to believe that it was to make Randy a patsy. The ATF attempted to force Randy to become an informant, and when he subsequently missed trial, a bench warrant went out. The ATF immediately went after Randy at the cabin in Ruby Ridge. During the ensuing standoff, an ATF agent was killed, along with Randy's wife Vicky and his 14-year-old son Sammy, who was shot in the back. Again, this was seen as a violation against personal rights. Now, Waco. The Branch Davidians were founded by Ben Roden in 1959 as an offshoot of the Davidian Seventh-day Adventist Church. By the mid-1980s, a power struggle over the group was resolved, and David Koresh took over. David Koresh took on child brides while maintaining a gun retail shop. They lived on a compound and were known to stock guns and ammunition. The ATF believed they were doing this illegally, and so on February 28, 1993, they got involved. David would not give up his people or himself. In the initial raid, more than 70 ATF agents went to the complex, resulting in a 2-hour battle in which 4 federal agents were killed and more than a dozen were injured, along with 6 Branch Davidians. The standoff lasted until April 19, 1993, and again, this is when a Bradley was used to create holes in the main building. They used flashbangs and tear gas, and as a result, a fire began in the building. The building burned violently, and in the end, 80 people were killed, including 27 children. Tim, again, had been in the area to show support for the Branch Davidians, reporting being profoundly changed after witnessing the inferno causing devastation to so many civilians. Now, let's move on to the second party really quickly. Terry Nichols was born on April 1st, 1955 in Lapeer, Michigan, to parents Joyce and Robert Nichols. Terry was the third of 4 children, and they were all raised on a farm. Reports state that he worked and took care of animals. Terry was also a shy kid all through high school, attending Lapeer High School, though he did play football, wrestled, and was part of the ski club. After graduating, Terry went to Central Michigan University, lasting approximately 1 term. Then, in 1974, a farming accident caused burns to his brother Leslie, who was running the farm. Terry returned to the farm but had a hard time getting along with the family and proceeded to leave again. In 1976, Terry moved to Colorado and worked in real estate, but his mother called and stated that he needed to come home once again to help with the family farm. He complied. In 1980, Terry met a woman named Lana Walsh. The two married and had a son by 1982. Terry was restless, though, and in 1988, at age 33, he enlisted in the Army, again meeting Tim during basic training. Lana filed for divorce and Terry requested a hardship leave in 1989 as a result. In 1990, Terry used a mail order bride agency, marrying 17-year-old Murrah Torres. At the time of their marriage, she was already pregnant. The child, however, died after suffocating on a plastic bag while left unattended overnight. The death was ruled accidental. After marrying, the two had 2 more children, and the couple would travel between the Philippines and the US, though after a while Terry traveled often without her. Once, Terry left a note and package of documents with Lana prior to traveling, but Lana opened them immediately instead of waiting and found a note that told her what to do in the event of his death. You see, while he was in the Philippines, he made a series of telephone calls to a Cebu City boarding house that was known to have terrorists within it, and it is suspected that this is where his bomb-making skills were perfected. Once Terry was arrested following the bombing that we're going to talk about, his wife did file for divorce, and Marif returned to the Philippines with the children when it was finalized. Now, let's move on to the day in question. On April 19th, 1995, President Clinton was at a press conference discussing the threat of terrorism. He stated, quote, "The biggest threat to the human life is the reaction caused by terrorism everywhere, and that is something we have to be sensitive to, whether it be a car bomb blowing up in the Middle East or a religious fanatic." End quote. That same day at 9:02 a.m., a truck bomb was detonated that rocked Oklahoma City. A federal building in Oklahoma City named the Alfred P. Murrah building that contained the Social Security Office, HUD, Secret Service, ATF, a credit union, and a daycare had catastrophic damage as a result. The front of the building was practically gone. A night shift doctor who happened to go out to breakfast before going to bed stated that about half the building was gone as he arrived on scene, beginning mass casualty triage by rapidly assessing people as they exited the building, which meant determining the possibility of saving a person in approximately 10 to 15 seconds. People staggered out of the building, and people swarmed for help, while police attempted to control the scene, though it was utter chaos for hours to come. During President Clinton's meeting, he was informed of the event that had just occurred. Also, approximately 70 miles away, and at 10:20 a.m., a police officer in Perry, Oklahoma, Charlie, pulls over a yellow Mercury as they had no license plate. He said that after pulling over the vehicle, he called out to the driver to exit. As he was reaching for his wallet, the officer sees a bulge in the person's jacket. Officer Charlie grabbed his jacket and pulled him forward, pulling out his service pistol as the man said his weapon was loaded. The man is handcuffed and his name is run for warrants. At this time, nothing comes up. But since he's carrying a loaded weapon without a permit and he's driving a vehicle with no license plate, he's arrested to be released on a misdemeanor charge the next day. Timothy James McVeigh was put into jail, fingerprinted, and photograph was taken, and he was taken to the city jail. In this photograph, Tim is wearing a shirt that says Sic Semper Tyrannis, celebrating the death of Abraham Lincoln. During intake, he wrote down his address as one in Decker, Michigan. Meanwhile, the FBI investigated the scene, quickly determining it was likely a bomb based on the damage to the street and the damage in the shape of the building. Tips came in that it was 2 Muslim men in a brown car, and people start coming out of the woodwork to talk about the Muslims being seen in and around the time of the bombing. This was likely exacerbated as this followed a failed attempt of a bombing on the World Trade Center, which was perpetrated by Middle Eastern men. At 10:28, while clearing people and searching the building, a second bomb is found. As a result, the entire area is once again evacuated. As the device was brought down, it's found to be a training device that was used by the ATF that was being prepared to be used in a sting operation. While it wasted precious time in saving people, it was necessary to be safe in such an unknown environment. Meanwhile, within hours of the explosion, reporters start to put together the pieces of the date of the bombing. As I said, it occurred on April 19th, on the 2-year anniversary of Waco. During his traveling, Timothy McVeigh also uses the same date as his birthday as a tribute to Waco and those involved in the siege. The investigation continued, as did the life-saving measures, and this is when an axle is found away from the site. As soon as it's found, investigators knew this was a truck bombing. They were able to get the VIN number and immediately obtained information on it. It was determined to have come from a Ryder rental truck from Elliott's Body Shop in Junction City, Kansas. A local FBI agent is dispatched and sent to get information on the renter, which is noted to be signed as Robert Kling with a birthday of April 19th, 1970. From Decker, Michigan. 2 days prior to the bombing, a sketch artist was sent out via plane to arrive the next day. By 7 a.m., 3 witnesses from the body shop were interviewed, and sketches of 2 white males that were the renters of the truck were created. The mechanic at the body shop gave the best description of the man who rented the truck, which was then used by officers who went around the local area to ask if anyone had seen either of the 2 men. Finally, they make it to Dreamland Hotel, where the owner reported that a Timothy McVeigh had a Ryder truck. An NCIC offline search is completed as they search for information on this Timothy McVeigh. Meanwhile, back in Perry, Oklahoma the next day, the jailhouse worker is attempting to get Timothy a court hearing in order to release him, unaware that his name was coming up in Kansas at this time. As there's so much going on in Oklahoma City, he cannot be seen on April 20th. He has to wait until the next day. On April 21st, the NCIC finally spits out that Timothy was arrested in Perry hours after the bombing. Officer Charlie gets a call asking if they still have Timothy in custody, as he's a suspect for the Oklahoma City bombing. Officer Charlie said that he was sitting in front of a judge as they spoke on the phone, later stating that it was about 35 to 45 minutes from getting out. The FBI manages to get to the courthouse, and they take over custody immediately. At the same time, the address in Decker, Michigan, brings a lead for the second sketched man. They raid the house to find that it's owned by the Nickel brothers. One of them, Terry Nichols, was a known associate of Timothy. The 2 again were in the same unit in the military, and Terry is found to be living with his wife and child in Harrington, Missouri. Local agents there are also sent out. They watch the house until Terry, his wife, and child come out of the house and get into a truck. Terry drove past his house and straight to police, turning himself in. From there, he was flown to an FBI office, and he was interviewed for over 10 hours. During the interview, Terry makes mention of knowing just as much or more about bombs than Timothy would. And back at the house, agents search, finding 5 rolls of blasting caps, a receipt for 2,000 pounds of ammonium nitrate, and a prepaid calling card. The calling card given from the Spotlight, a right-wing group. Timothy's father's interviewed, and when asked who he might do something big with, he reports Terry Nichols and Michael Fortier. Michael Fortier is living in Kingman, Arizona. At this time, Michael refuses to speak on the issue, claiming Tim was innocent. But the calling card found at Terry's linked to Michael. It was shown when and where it was used and what was picked up, makings of the bombings used in Oklahoma City. But the FBI needed the full picture, and so they made an immunity deal with Michael. And after that, he began talking about how he went to Oklahoma City, where Timothy showed him where the bomb was going, that Timothy used soup cans to sketch out the bomb and other details about the bombing itself. During his time in jail, Tim spoke with 2 reporters exclusively. The duo ended up with over 60 hours of taped interviews. Much of that was used to understand Tim's thinking, his background, and more. During the interview, Tim said he had no remorse for his action. As the dust settled on the carnage, 168 people were killed in the act of domestic terrorism. 19 of them were children. From the investigation, agents found traces of chemicals used in the explosion on Tim's clothes and a business card on which Tim had scribbled, quote, TNT at 5 per stick, need more, end quote. They also learned about his extremist ideologies and his anger over the events at Waco 2 years earlier, which again I discussed briefly. The bombing was quickly solved, but the investigation turned out to be one of the most exhaustive in FBI history. By the time it was over, the Bureau had more than 28,000 interviews, followed by 43,000 investigative leads, amassed 3.5 tons of evidence, and they had to review nearly 1 billion pieces of information, and all of this was before the trials were set to begin. On August 10th, 1995, Timothy McVeigh and Terry Nichols were indicted in the terrorist bombing of Oklahoma City. Michael Fortier was charged with having prior knowledge and was again to testify against the pair as part of his plea deal. In 11 days of testimony, over 90 witnesses were brought to testify during Tim's trial. Tim continued his stance that he really didn't care. And on June 2nd, 1997, the jury finds Tim guilty. So during the sentencing phase, the jury recommended the death penalty. As for Terry, attorney Michael Tiger was appointed as his defense. Tiger agreed but stipulated that he would get to pick his own co-counsel, stating, quote, "This is going to be a long ride, and I get to say who's on the boat," end quote. Just before trial, prosecution brought up a deal that the death penalty would be off the table in Oklahoma State as well. Terry said no, and the prosecutor responded, stating, quote, "Mr. Nichols, I'm offering you your life," end quote. To which Terry reportedly said, quote, "Well, it really isn't yours to offer, sir. Now is it?" End quote. Timothy McVeigh's sentence was completed on June 11th, 2001, when he was put to death by lethal injection at the Federal Correctional Complex in Terre Haute, Indiana. His execution occurred just about 6 years after the bombing, and this is relatively unheard of. But the expedition was in part due to his refusal to pursue appeals or stays of execution. Terry Nichols was convicted of conspiracy and involuntary manslaughter and is serving life without parole plus 161 consecutive life sentences at the federal Supermax prison in Florence, Colorado. Michael Fortier pled guilty to failing to alert authorities and spent 10 years in prison. Upon his release, he and his wife went into the Federal Witness Protection Program. What was left of the federal building was torn down about a month after the bombing, and a memorial was built over the rubble. The memorial includes a museum, a reflecting pool, and 168 empty chairs of glass, bronze, and stone with the names of those that were killed. 19 of the chairs are smaller than the others, and this is for each of the children. Gates to the memorial park mark the times 9:01 and 9:03, while the reflecting pond between them is to represent 9:02, the minute of the explosion. A, quote, survivor tree, end quote, which was a gnarled American elm that withstood the blast, still stands on a small hill and shades the memorial. The memorial site is among Oklahoma's most popular destinations. It typically draws more than 500,000 visitors each year, and local schools bus children there to learn about the dangers of political violence. And this was the tragedy of the Oklahoma City bombing. To all those out there listening, be careful. It's a dangerous world we live in.